Blake, I don't feel like podcasting today. Can you handle it from here?
Wait, am I about to enter my work era?
Welcome to the Church Gear Podcast, where we pull the tech out of the booth and onto the stage to share the most outlandish stories and hidden wisdom from the tech trenches. And now, here are your hosts.
I'm your co-host, Blake Hodges, a man who now has to work for a living and tell the intro story. And I'm here with my co-host who is out of stories, Toby Walters.
So by work era, is this like a Taylor Swift thing? Like she has her eras to her? Or is this, a millennial thing where, most of your life is spent finding meaning in who you are, but you're suddenly thrust into your work era for like 3 years where you actually have to do work?
Yeah, it's the work era. You think I need any meaning, Toby? I've been the brand director for Church Gear since 2020. I got all the meaning I need in life.
And do you have a brand director, like just a personal brand director?
Well, yeah, I farm all this out to India. I don't do any of this work. I mean, it's all...
No, I mean for like your personal image and brand, Blake Hodges.
Well, you will notice that I did upgrade to a leather backpack this year because my wife was like, hey, maybe you should look like a brand director. And I was like, you're probably right.
Yeah. Did she recommend you start wearing underwear as well?
Well, I actually had to do that recently when I went to the doctor, and it was awful. I don't know. I don't even know how I made it the 30 steps in the door, which they had to do an ultrasound, so I'm kind of glad I did wear it, but we're getting a little too personal here. The ultrasound was on me. Don't ask questions.
But yes, Blake, I'm out of stories. Like, we're going to some events coming up. We're going to interact with a lot of churches. I will get more stories, but it's like we're recording on a Friday afternoon. Like, I'm out. So do you have anything interesting to talk about?
Well, Toby, should I tell you about the first time I ran tech?
Oh, dear Lord.
This Wednesday.
It's usually the disaster stories at the end of the episode,
I know.
Blake.
This Wednesday, we're doing a youth event, and the youth minister, Mason, I love you, but he did not plan it for crap. He's new. He's young. He's got enthusiasm. I know that archetype.
Sounds like our brand director.
Difference is I do plan. So he looks at me. There's like 25 kids. It's only the 9th grade group. And he goes, Blake, you're in the booth. You're the tech guy. I'm what?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I jump in the booth. My kids come up to me and they say, you have a podcast. You can do this.
And weren't you wearing a Church Gear shirt?
I was wearing our new record shirt.
Okay.
I said, guys, having a podcast doesn't mean I can do this.
No. It means you can talk out of your butt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which, that's a good one. So I get up there at first and I'm playing Spotify and they're like, oh, well, let's do a drum roll. And I play a drum roll and they all cheer. And I'm like, yes.
So you have like sound effects buttons in there?
Well, I look up Spotify. I've got a Mac and then I've got some old Yamaha board.
Yeah, I know what that board is. Do you know what it was?
No.
It's a DM1000.
So I had 1,000 chances to make it work, and I played the drum roll, and everyone cheered, and I was like, being a tech guy is great.
See, I saw your picture online. I know that room at Fellowship. Like, Fellowship is a Digico house. They've got Digico everywhere, but like that is, the upper room in the barn, like just one of the extra meeting spaces. And so that DM1000 used to be in like the barn where the larger events happen. They just put it up there because
Let's just call it what it is. The youth room gets the crap gear.
Yeah.
That's how it goes.
Totally.
So my first one is a success. Well, then they're like, hey, can we get the slides up for worship? It's just this one 9th grader with an acoustic guitar. I can't get these slides up.
Do you know the name of the program you were using?
So I was looking and I was like, oh, Pro Presenter. I know that name. And that's all I know. I don't know anything else. Enoch, you're going to have to do it without the slides. So he starts playing. Well, then Todd goes to speak, and dude, the moment he turns his mic on, it explodes. It just goes, and I immediately pulled that fader down, and I saved the room. It was no longer exploding.
This is going wildly horribly.
I turned the mic off.
I guess.
I then had another mic to give to him, and I was like, oh, this is a good moment for my story I tell later, but he wouldn't take it. He's like, there's 20 kids here. I don't need a mic. He's like, okay, I saved the mic from exploding. Well, then the message ends. They're supposed to just be hanging out now. I walk away from the booth for 2 seconds, and these little hoodlums, they mess everything up. I can't get this. The sounds aren't playing anymore. And I'm looking at all my faders. I'm like, I know my faders now. I don't know my faders. I'm like, why isn't the sound working? And the stereo had been turned to 0. And I was like, I bet that looks like master control. And I pull it up, and Spotify comes back.
The stereo. I love that you just refer to it as the stereo, like your dad in the 80s.
No, it said stereo, I think.
Well, the Stereo Master Bus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Turned it up.
So by you, was that the end of your tech story? So
Almost.
I can
Last one. The last moment is we're trying to end the night, like all the 4 leaders are, and they're like, how do we turn all this stuff off? And I've always thought our podcast setup was weird because we have this one piece of rack gear that all it does is turn off the whole thing. I've thought that's really dumb.
A Furman power conditioner?
Sure. I was like, I guess that's not sure. That's Furman. But I was like, I guess I need to turn all this off. And I went, I bet this will work. Because they had a similar one. I hit the off button. It all turned off and they thought I was a genius.
Oh my gosh. So essentially, they put you in the booth. You were able to run Spotify at first, but you couldn't run Pro Presenter, and you exploded the speaker's microphone, and then you couldn't figure out how to get the music going again. But then I did. The biggest win is that you knew how to turn everything off.
I think my biggest win was when the mic exploded. That was not on me. I was able to turn it off and keep it from being awful sounding.
Wow. I have a little bit more confidence in our guest today that if he was left to the youth booth, even though he is a lighting guy, that he would be able to handle it and figure out Pro Presenter. So since you did the story, I am introducing a 2-time Church Gear podcast winner, the broadcast lighting director of Church of the Highlands in Birmingham and King of the Reds, Griffin McCravy. Griff, welcome back.
How's it going?
Do you feel like you were worthy of the 2-time winning status, or do you feel like you should have at least been on 3 times at this point?
Runner-up for sure. I don't know about 3.
I think, is it only Todd Elliott and Jeff Sandstrom that have been on 3 times at this point?
I think Todd might be going for 4 now.
Ooh, man, Todd.
I think both of them are actually pushing 4.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's heavy hitters.
But
that's heavy hitters. I don't take that lightly.
You're in good company with, Scott Ragsdale and Tim Foote. Caleb Lepke's been on a couple times. So, like, you're swimming with some serious souls there.
And you did get on before Justin Fire Sheets for a second time. So you can leverage that over him.
You're the original Highlands mastermind.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, Toby, since I did the story, how about you read the Truth and a Lie? And part of that segment is mispronouncing things, so don't forget to do that.
Okay. So I already see what I'm going to mispronounce, so this will be great. Okay, 5 Truths and a Lie. Number 1, apparently Griff says he started playing golf competitively at age 6. Wow. So like 4 years ago. Okay. Griff claims he's never been out of the country.
You don't get to leave Alabama.
Yeah. Next up, his first disciple was in audio, not lighting. Wow, he's straight up Jesusing himself.
I'm about to say,
and
he's got
having
disciples?
Yeah, okay.
Oh, I read that and thought, oh no.
Number 4, he claims he has never gone skydiving.
You don't do that in Alabama either.
Yeah. Next up, he says he was born in the same hospital as Channing Tatum. Catch that, Blake?
Channing Tatum.
Okay, great. Thank you for the correction. And finally, he says he has gone diving to 4 shipwrecks. Huh.
I'm locking in the lie as the 4 shipwrecks.
Okay. That's cool.
That
That's
was
cool.
early. That was quick.
Yeah.
No questions. You're
I've
just
been on a hot streak recently, and I've noticed when I just go quickly, I tend to do better.
I'm going to say that he was not born in the same hospital as Channing Tatum.
Dang it, Toby. I hope you were going to go with my first discipline was an audio, not lighting, because
His first
Griffin...
disciple.
Well, we know what he meant to say. Griffin is a little lazy. He already used that in his first episode.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Nice.
Did I really?
I'm
I was
pretty
trying to
sure.
remember ones I didn't use.
Yeah.
All right, McCravy. What's the lie?
The lie is I did not start playing golf competitively at the age of 6.
Dang it.
Did you find any treasure on those 4 shipwreck dives?
Found a lot of things. Shark, a lot of sand. Treasure was not one of them.
I'm still looking for treasure with Blake, but I just don't believe it's in there.
Toby, you just gotta lift up the right jelly roll, man.
You're definitely a
dig
shipwreck, though. Okay, so see, I read, my first disciple was an audio, not lighting. I thought you were using the word disciple as like intern, like you were training disciples.
Oh, yeah.
But okay, so
It's
discipline.
a very unfortunate typo.
Yeah, but I thought it was kind of cute. It was a good try. And so obviously you have been skydiving. Tell us about that.
Yes. So it was about 3 years ago. It was something I said I would never do. We grew up kind of on like some farmland in the outskirts of Old Coleman County, Alabama.
Nice.
If you've never been, it's a great place. And Did I just do that on accident? Oh my God.
There's a laser show behind you.
I don't know what Griffin has on his Zoom account, but just putting his hands up made like a whole disco show from the 80s. Toby was having
I'm a lighting
flashbacks.
guy. Did you expect any less?
No,
Definitely not.
I'm expecting more, but
Back to the skydiving. So we lived near this little like regional airport my whole life, and every Sunday I would see people like skydiving. It was like what everybody in Coleman County, I guess, goes and does on the weekend.
goes and do's.
And so goes and does.
They don't go to the grammar
that's how
school.
we talk in Coleman County. That's how we talk in Coleman County.
Yeah, perfect.
And so I just for years and years had seen these people skydive, and I was like, you know what, I have to try it. And so went, did it. It was awesome. Didn't die. You don't actually get to do it. You're like attached to somebody. So that was a little bit of a letdown. I wanted to have the final say in the parachute when it opened, but it's fine.
Okay. So, I mean, you're still alive. It's
Oh yeah, still
doing
here.
good. Yeah. And so you and Channing Tatum, are you guys like best buds? Have you talked, extensively about your, being born at the same hospital?
Yeah, I mean, it's been 2 or 3 weeks since we caught up. So I don't know what he's been up to this weekend.
You guys were,
I mean, he's doing well.
You're working out your abs together and chatting about it.
Yeah, I mean, you can't tell, Yeah.
I was born at the same hospital as Michael Jackson's son. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't really relate on this because I don't ever say that the hospital that I was born at that other people were. People say they were born at the same hospital as Blake Hodges.
Oh,
So-
right. I was going to say you were born
So
in the
what
same.
it's like on the other side
Yeah.
of the equation.
Blake, you were born in the same hayloft as.
There you go. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, Griffin, it's almost FILO time. And if people are listening to this, it's a day before FILO. So we just wanted to welcome back our favorite lighting director, a.k.a. Ginger Lightning, Griff. And it's your second time with us now. So last time you were at FILO teaching a breakout. Are you going to teach a breakout this year?
Are you going to be at FILO?
So I will be at FILO. I'm actually super excited for any of you who may be listening. The day before might be a little quick to decide to book a plane flight and go. But if you still have time and you want to show up, I'm actually really excited. I'm going to be helping lead a new lane this year called the Basics Track. And so the idea is going to be for any kind of church tech out there that audio, video, lighting systems, kind of a little mix of everything. If you just have questions for your system specifically that you need answers to, you're not even sure where to start, and going to a lighting class with fill in the blank name is kind of a scary thought of how do we do these big, huge lighting designs? You're I just need to know what the first lighting console I need to know is. I'm really excited to be helping to host and lead a basics track this year that's going to hopefully help to kind of fill that gap from where some church tech guys are to where they want to be one day, and kind of answer some of those questions to get our foundation set so that we can get our ministries off on the right foot. So super excited about it, if you can't tell.
Does Blake even qualify for basics after listening to his failed attempt at running the tech booth?
No, so we would like to start him on a Intro to Life 101, and then we'll let him kind of step up from there.
That's pretty good. You stole my own joke,
played.
Toby.
Yeah. This is a new thing. I know Todd has talked about how, a wide variety of people come to FILO, and some of them need the basics and some need advanced. And I know they're doing both tracks this year, which is going to be really cool. Is there a specific reason why they assigned you to the basics?
I think that was a dig from old Justin that's been on the episode. I think he figured I need to get my basics down first before I can go to the advanced class. Mm-hmm. No, I'm very excited for it. I think it's going to hopefully be a comfortable environment for people to ask questions that are if I needed to fail type question, right? It's hey, I'm not sure how I get to where I want to be. I know where I want to be, but I'm not sure how to get there yet. Hopefully it's going to be a really fun environment. It's going to be very Q&A heavy for anybody out there, and you guys that y'all know FILO class as well. It's a lot of content and then kind of a couple minutes at the end to kind of get some questions in. So the basics track, we're going to kind of flip that script. We're going to do a very small amount of content, kind of set the scene for what we're going to be talking about and what we would hope some of the questions are kind of around. And it's going to be a lot of Q&A to really try to get some answers in people's hands. So I'm super excited for it.
Yep. What's the most advanced thing in the basics track?
The most advanced thing in the basics track is probably going to be the Knowing Your Systems class. So we've got a class in the works that's going to be Blake Hodges, were put in the booth at your church and you don't know what any of the doodads and gadgets do. How do you even begin to figure out what the firmament is and how to get it on so that the rack moves on? So we're going to try to kind of dive into some basic AVL systems, both for if you're needing to build one and in a situation where I think there's a lot of church guys out there who kind of get dumped into the way something always was, and they're not really sure where to like get on the train in the right place to start figuring out how to keep it on the tracks, so to speak.
Yeah. I've told the story before on the pod, but I got to visit a church out in Dallas area, and brand new tech director. He had been a worship guy forever. And so he's very much in that situation of, I don't know how to work this system. And why do I have a Waves LV1 and a Midas M32 at front of house? And I'm like, that's a great question, because I've never seen that before. And so it was fun just to get him connected with other techs in the area that are like, oh yeah, we can totally help. So yeah, this would be a fun moment for people that maybe are a little bit like they don't need life 101 like Blake, but just to ask those questions and not feel embarrassed. Like that can be an intimidating thing to come to FILO and feel like, I feel embarrassed because I don't know anything. And that's okay.
Yeah, no, we want them just the way they are, and we want to help them get to where we want them to go. And that's, exceeding and excelling at, fulfilling whatever the ministry, whatever the vision looks like for their church. So we're super excited for it.
Maybe I should teach a class on not feeling embarrassed. I can totally teach that class.
I don't know if I can put you in, but I'll pencil you in. It's just, the eraser is just right there beside it.
And Blake, between you and I, who is more easily embarrassed?
Oh, I think it's you, man.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
We should test this sometime.
I know we should. And I'm hoping
Blake,
that
I feel like you would show a blush quicker than Toby would, though.
Well, it's just because I have a skin condition. I'm technically always blushing.
I mean, I'm the same way. I can't talk, so.
Redhead Club.
And I think, I'm hoping some of our listeners are on the plane or in the car right now on their way to FILO. So if you're on the way, come by our booth and just take a moment and fire Blake. Like it's always a lot of fun.
I do it every chance I get.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, Griffin texts me every morning.
All right, Griff. So let's shrink closer to home. What's going on at Highlands? Are you guys up to 4,000 campuses now? Are you still at 3,000? Do you guys have any cool projects you guys been working on?
Yeah. Well, we're at 2,670, so not quite where we wanted to be, but we've made some improvement. No, we're actually in a season where, at least inwardly as kind of a church production team, we've kind of been looking at systems and disciplines and the way we do things. And what we're realizing is we're getting a lot of people, a lot of families, especially, that are kind of staying at church or coming to church post-COVID that maybe joined in online. In our environment where, you can tune into an online service, and they're kind of starting to come in and check it out and kind of kick the tires, as my pastor would say, Pastor Hodges. And so we're getting a lot of families that are coming in. They're kind of wanting to know, how do I be a part of the church, whether that's the kids team or the greeters team or for us, the production team. And so we're kind of in a season right now that's been fun, but it's been a little showing, and it's been a little challenging, where we're asking some of the tough questions of why do we do what we do, and are we doing certain things that we're doing just because that's how we always did it. And so we're actually kind of in the midst of writing out some curriculum that we're going to be heavily utilizing the MXU platform. A little shout out to them, to get our volunteers kind of in the platform and get them to start kind of learning some of the disciplines and areas and focuses and things like that before we actually even ever get them on the team. So then once we get them, there's somebody who at least has, heard some of the terms, knows some of the ideas and theories, and then we can kind of take them and show them the vision for a worship service that we're trying to produce. So a lot of kind of like under the hood, kind of behind the scenes kind of stuff going on right now. Really trying to just say, we've done things really well so far, 23 years in, but how can we kind of best equip ourselves and best prepare ourselves for, what we've got next. And then, on the exterior front, we've had a lot of conferences. We actually just wrapped up a conference called ARC Conference, which there's probably some churches out there listening. Association of Related Churches that just builds new church builds. And so had a blast the last 3 days hosting pastors and leaders from really all over the world. We had a couple countries that were there, and then, tuning in online and such like that, to be able to just kind of encourage them and equip them and empower them to kind of go out and keep doing the work that, as y'all will probably agree, is seems harder than ever. It seems like our schedules are busier, time is shorter, and there's just more to be done than ever before. But it's a very exciting time, but it's also kind of a little bit of a daunting time to try to, take on some of those tasks. But that's kind of what we've got going on right now.
Yeah, it's fascinating, the timing, because I just saw somebody commented on a post on one of the forums on Facebook yesterday, and they mentioned that Highlands Production has a page with like systems and processes, like isn't it a handbook essentially that you guys have created?
Yeah.
And so I like literally yesterday, I was like, that's interesting. And I looked at the link and I'm like, oh, you guys are like creating a handbook for all your volunteers and your team members to, learn these things. And is this kind of, for lack of a better term, is this open source? Can other teams look at this and develop it for their people as well?
Yeah, definitely. So we kind of fall under a idea that we titled Grow. The idea is that it's churches that might be smaller in size, that might not have some of the resources, or even have made some of the mistakes even that we've made. It's kind of, we learned it so that you don't have to sort of, mentality. And so we have a lot of like white label, open source, nothing with our name on it, just how we were basically like, hey, here's what worked for us. Here's the 6 things we had to try before we got to this decision. In our processes, in our training, even in like gear we use and things like that. And we kind of give all that out to churches that would like it. Really just in an overall sense of we are the church, capital C church. And, any way we can help other churches, other ministries, other production teams, we love to do. And then, taking calls and having churches come in and visit and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot of fun being able to kind of feel like you've got a little tiny hand in some of the other ministries out there and being able to help them get to what they are today. It's a lot of fun.
And what's the URL for that?
So that is, if you go to growleader.com, you can sign basically your church up for it. And it's a portal that you get entered into that it's not just even production stuff. It's going to be, HR and accounting and team management and kids team and all kinds of different stuff that we've kind of, basically grouped it all together and made it where you're able to use some of our stuff, all white labeled. None of the Church of the Highlands logo is on it. It's just kind of for people to have. So it's a super cool thing we've kind of set up.
Yeah. I got to go to Bayside Community down in Florida. Every year they have a Relate conference, and they essentially have church leaders come in and they kind of love on them and then teach them their model of how they've learned and developed systems and how to do church. And so I love seeing churches that are further down the road then turn back and say, hey, everybody, like we figured a few things out. If you're interested, we'd happy to share that information with you. I think that's very much the gospel mentality of not holding it, not putting
I think it's the church being the church.
Yeah. Don't put your red light, your red hair under a bushel, Griff. Let your red hair light shine.
It's one of my favorite reaches you've ever done.
That's right.
Do I get the lasers again?
Yeah, where are those lasers? Okay, so you guys are famous or infamous, depending on how you feel about it, every December for a just like really amazing Christmas program every year. So give us a little snapshot of like how to go this year, what was different, what worked, what didn't work. Give us the inside scoop.
Yeah. So Christmas is interesting. We kind of look at Easter and Christmas as our 2 times of the year to reach and make an impression on people who might not normally come to church, with kind of 2 different ideas in mind. Easter being telling the story of our King, our risen Savior, telling his story. So that's a little more focused in during the message and with some of the programming, like the actual flow of the service, a little less production, heavy. With Christmas, we're famous or infamous, as you might say, for a little more of a something you could invite your whole family to, like, hey, Uncle Toby, I know you don't normally go to church, but like we've got this show you could come see this weekend. So it's a little more of a show is probably not the best way to say it, but it's kind of the idea a little bit, just to give people the message of the good news, but in a way that's packaged where you might reach more people than you might in another scenario. And so we've kind of internally ended up on this calendar that's like, we'll kind of we'll do a year that's a little more fun, a little more extravagant. And then we'll do the next year we'll do one that's a little more, I guess like finesse is a word you could use. Maybe like no less production than the year before, but maybe not quite as like in your face. And the idea is just kind of a little bit of a palate cleanser. You know, if for 14 years in a row you've been coming to Christmas at Highlands, we call it, and every single year it's a laser and confetti shooting in your face every 30 seconds, it's a little bit of whiplash. It just kind of gets old. So this last year was a little more finesse. It was a little more joy to the world. We sat down really honestly around this time, and that probably there's people listening who are probably like, oh my gosh, they start planning in April. Not like hard details. We will kind of sit down and think about, where is culture at? Where's the world at right now? Like, what do people need? What do people need to hear? And around this time last year, we really kind of all started rallying around the idea of people just needed joy. I mean, we had gone through COVID. We've gone through all the sickness and death and disease that we had seen and we had been through, and that family members have been impacted by. And I think we really felt like as a team, there was a lot of people who never got a chance to unpack some of that maybe emotion and some of the things they'd been through, and just kind of like pushed through just for the emphasis of getting through the last couple of years. And so when we sat down as a team to start talking about Christmas, we were like, people just need joy. People just need to laugh, just need to have a good time. So it was very heavy on our video team, on our in-house creative team, making some video content that really would kind of put a smile on people's face. So we actually did are y'all familiar with the HGTV, the like Extreme Home Makeover show?
Oh, yeah.
So we did a take off of the Extreme Home Makeover bit, but we did it with a family that was having their house made over. But what they didn't know is that it was a gingerbread house. So we got a chance to do some really cool AI stuff and actually like have them in the space on camera on a green screen, but it's, you know, it doesn't actually exist. But for all you know, watching the screen, they're in a gingerbread house. And we actually were able to track down the voice, that female voice that HGTV uses, and she did it. So like watching the video, like you're kind of engrossed in it. You're like, this really is Extreme Home Makeover. And so that was a lot of fun, just kind of a way to make people laugh, to have a good time. And then we did a big kind of carol bit this year. So again, not super production heavy, but just kind of focusing on what do people need. So sang some carols at the broadcast campus where I'm based out of. We had 28 snow machines. So the entire room had snow. So we did Winter Wonderland and a couple songs like that, just to kind of give people a few minutes to just kind of relax and enjoy and smile. And, you know, looking out from front of house, seeing the little kids like reach up and like touch the snow, you know, it's just like we were kind of trying to give people what we felt like people needed. And then, of course, a message of Jesus, a message of hope there at the end with Pastor Chris Hodges, Blake's uncle.
Yep.
But yeah, so we really just kind of wanted to try to create an environment of joy and fun. So that was kind of a little bit behind the scenes from this last year. This next year, I can't share any secrets, but who knows what it might hold,
So Blake, I have a bunch of questions, but first of all, he said, we sit down in April and we're kind of like, what's going on in the world? What's going on in culture? And I feel like your immediate brain, Blake, is like, they're going to do the Eras tour because that's the only thing happening in the world right now.
They're going to be in their Christmas era.
Okay, Griff, my first question is, how do you clean up all the snow in between performances?
Well, first things first, I apologize to our facilities team at length. That was actually a very interesting challenge because if you've never been to Church of the Highlands, so our main broadcast campus, it's a sloped seating kind of scenario. So there's some flat seating at first, and then it turns into stadium seating. And so for the stadium seating, it's all carpet. It's all, the cloth chairs. So that wasn't really a concern. What was the main concern was on the floor. It's concrete. It's all concrete. And so probably around the October, early November timeframe last year, thinking ahead to December, we had the company send us a unit so we could see it, test it. I always recommend, if you're going to try something like this, test it, get your hands on it, even if it's just like one, as quick as you can to learn its quirks, its features, things like that. And so we got our hands on one of the units, and the first thing we noticed was it made the concrete like ice. It was just so slippery. And so what we ended up doing was we had just kind of like, we had made a plot, literally like a lighting plot, like you would do on a stage, but we did a plot of our whole room of where we thought the snow machines were going to go. And we ended up kind of adjusting positioning a little bit to try to make it where the whole room would still get snow, but the actual output of snow machines was actually over seats as much as we could, so that a lot of the cloth kind of grabbed the snow, as opposed to, creating, I don't want to create a fall hazard and have somebody slip down and fall while they're attending Christmas at Highlands. So in that scenario, really our best bet was we didn't want to abandon the idea. So we had to just kind of make it work with our environment, which was trying to catch as much cloth and fabric and things like that as we could. And then in between every service, it was a wet jet army, just spraying and just mopping as quick as we could. We do, because our Christmas services are a little bit usually more complicated and more going on, we don't normally stick to our normal service times. So our normal service times leave about 20 or 25 minutes to kind of do a quick sweep of our auditorium, get trash out, coffee cups, things like that. For our Christmas experiences, we usually make it a little closer to 30 to 45 minutes, not even knowing like what all the elements are going to be yet, just to give us more time to be prepared for the next one. So, if you're a church out there listening and you're like, I don't even know how to get that much stuff done and then do it again for another service, like, don't make it hard on yourself. Like, normally on a Sunday morning, we have, 3 services. We have 8, 9:45, and 11:30. So they're pretty stacked in there. For Christmas, we just do a 9 and 11 in the morning. You don't have to shove as much in there. If you need the time, give yourself the time, and then just communicate it well ahead of time, so that we start communicating usually around October, end of October, kind of early November, what the dates and times of our Christmas services are going to be. Because you got family, you got people coming over, you're trying to plan meals and everybody doing Christmas together and all that kind of stuff. So we try to give people as much information as we can, as quickly as we can.
And how many performances did you guys do of the Christmas at Highlands?
So this last year we did 14 at the broadcast campus. So depending on where Christmas falls, there will usually be like a normal Sunday service. And then somewhere in the start of that week, we will do usually about 5 days in a row, and we end on Christmas Eve. Mm-hmm. 2 things that our pastor does that I'm super thankful for, and it really shows his heart that he is thinking about us just as much as he's thinking about the church, is there's always an off day in the middle. So there's a day where we could have services, but we don't, just to let the staff kind of have time to be with their families, because we're still in the middle of the Christmas season, even though, we need to have Christmas services. So he always gives us a day. Usually we try to make it right in the middle, so that it's like a 3 and a 3, like 3 days, 1 day off, 3 days on, or something like that. And then the second thing is we never do a service on Christmas Eve that starts later than 3 p.m. So, the service is letting out around 4:30, 5 o'clock, depending on how long the kind of programming of the service is, so that even if there's little things to clean up, things to do like that, we can kind of get home to our families on Christmas Eve. So, but this year we did 14 at Grants Mill, the broadcast campus, and then I think we had 188 system wide.
Wow.
So that's like, if you take the 14 that Grants Mill does, then add the 8 that the next campus does. And so that was all the available opportunities you have.
Blake, I think we just figured out why Todd Elliott hates Christmas.
Yeah, it's because it never ends.
Never ends.
So Griff, I'm assuming you do, a special lighting design that you're planning that probably months in advance. You're bringing in other tools. Let's talk about just, normal Sunday mornings for you guys at Highlands. You guys have almost as many franchises as Chick-fil-A at this point, but,
franchises is a derogatory term. Campuses.
Campuses.
See, if Toby went to church, he'd know that's what that's called.
That's right. Do you guys, do you create one design and send it to all the campuses? Does broadcast do something different than all the other campuses? How does that work?
Yeah. So the idea is that the vision is that it's one church, many locations. So we're trying to get the message out to as many people as we can. So that's the idea behind having right now 26 campuses, portable and permanent, a combination of the two. So specifically talking about the nuts and bolts of lighting, what that looks like is It just kind of is the way it worked out. I ended up falling into a position years ago where I was the person picking content for the weekend. So we do one piece of song content per song. We use church motion graphics, which there's probably a lot of people out there that are using it as well. And so I'll kind of go in under the direction and vision of Pastor Chris and some of the lead team of, they're even thinking visually, like what the weekend looks like. Like Pastor Chris knows what song content I picked for the weekend. So I think that might resonate with some people and that might surprise some people. But our vision is really just like, there's no part of the service too small. Like for what we need to do, for what we're trying to communicate, which is either eternity in heaven or eternity in hell for people, there's no part of the service that's like that it's too little to not think about. And so I even have direct, vision items and line items from PC and some of the creative team kind of for what we're wanting to do. And so I'll pick those and I'll pair a primary and a secondary color with it. So if it's some kind of blue jump back, I might say dark blue and slate blue, just to give us an example. And we use Slack to communicate that out to the campuses for the weekend. And then we utilize Dropbox, where our broadcast team, our central team, will put the downloaded files on Dropbox. It's on the campus computers. They load it in on Sunday morning, it's usually either ProPresenter or Resolume, depending on their campus, if they're an LED wall or a single screen or whatever. And so then I, as a lighting volunteer, would come in, sit down at the desk, and we have a standardized show file on Sundays that all the campuses, it might be slightly different based off of how many profile lights you have versus how many watch lights you have, but the feel is the same. When you get in the car, it feels similar to drive it, even if it's the limited or the long range version, And so they'll get in, they'll sit down at the desk, and they'll input presets that we have sent out on that show file. So position information, focus information, gobo information, they're inputting all that kind of as they see fit. And based off of kind of how they were trained and brought up and developed of what we're wanting Sunday to feel like. And then the only thing that's really like communicated by the central team is just that song content and the colors. And then from there, they kind of get to put some of their, spunk some of their ideas into it of what they want it to look like as far as positions and intensities and what lights are on and what lights are off and things like that. And the idea being that it kind of fits under that one church, many locations. And then from there, on a Sunday, all of our effects that we run are totally on the fly. So not on the fly in the sense that they're not planned, but that they're not in a queue list. So a queue list for any campus, whether it's me at the main location or whether it's one of our campuses 2.5 hours away in a school gym, they're going to have a lighting queue list that's kind of every piece of the service. So everything from walk-in to worship to the message look to walk out. And then from there, kind of similar to the presets, we set up just different effects. So maybe like a fade effect that, fades all the lights, a fade effect for the profile lights, a fade effect for the wash lights, a pan effect. We just have a whole bank of effects that are on the faders, on the handles, on the console. And during rehearsal, that's their time where, musicians kind of figuring out parts and things like that. Rehearsal for them is figuring out what parts of the service kind of fit to run what effects and, what to do when. And like I said, that's the same for me as well as all the other campuses on a Sunday.
So it's been 2 years since we've talked to you on the pod. Has the approach of, lighting and creative changed? I'm sure it's changed some in the last 2 years. How has it changed? And then, pair that with some of the trends you're seeing in other churches that you do or don't like, where are you guys going with lighting and creative, and where's the church at large going with lighting and creative?
Yeah, I think, we're moving into a season that, if I'm being open and honest, can be a little scary, but it can also be exciting. And it's a season of less is more. As a creative, I want to be figuring out what the next cool thing is, what the next cool effect I can have is. I am feeling it talking to other church LDs that I kind of am in regular communication with, as well as even some things we've done internally. I am feeling a direction of less is more. And I think that's I think that's based off the audience that is coming into church right now. So I think you're getting a lot of people who, by the grace of God, are more open to hearing about the gospel than ever before. But I think there are also people who aren't sure exactly what church should look like. So I think as somebody who's not sure what church should look like, when you walk into church, your assumptions and your preconceptions of what it's going to be like can be very jarring versus what it really is. So what I mean by all that is we are in a process of kind of backing off some of the lighting effects we run, even thinking about things like the intensity of our house lights. Like, are the rooms too dark? Do people come in and are like, what are they doing in here? Like all kinds of scenarios like that we're really thinking through right now. As a matter of fact, I don't know if people will be surprised by this or if a lot of other people do it as well. But we do a lot of focus groups with people that aren't involved in the church at all. So we literally will hold, like, our name isn't on it anywhere. We're just asking about like church services in general, but we'll do a lot of third party focus groups with people. They might go to church, they might not. And one of the biggest pieces of feedback we've received recently is we run our house lights a lot lower at our locations. Our idea being to make people more comfortable to be able to worship however they want to worship. A lot of the feedback we've gotten from focus groups is we walk into a church in the Highlands campus and we can't see to go up the stairs, and I'd rather not trip and fall up the stairs. I'd rather just walk right back out the door. So we've actually, based off focus groups recently, raised our house lights levels in all of our auditoriums to try to make it not like, 100% like the sun's out, but just try to like split a gap a little bit to make it a little more comfortable for anyone and everyone coming into church. So that's kind of a direction that I feel like I've seen a lot of churches kind of make a step toward, even if they haven't shifted all the way there yet, is kind of a less is more. And when I say less is more, there's so many ways you can be creative without just like blinding somebody, making something bright, having a bigger LED wall. We've talked about, and none of this is, decided or confirmed or in the works or anything like that. But I've had a lot of design meetings recently of like, what would it look like if we took our broadcast campus to like a no LED set for an entire 6 months? Like a sheet again on the back wall with a projector like you would have seen in 2010 and project words up there. And that'd be it. And so, again, some of that stuff's kind of fluid. We haven't made a lot of decisions yet, but just kind of being aware of where people are at right now when they're coming into church. What are they seeing? What are they experiencing? So I think we're moving into a less is more kind of season.
I think we've heard that time and time again, and I totally echo what you're saying, that I feel like we've reached the pinnacle of, craziness in church as far as production goes, and we're like, oh, okay, I think we went a bit too far. Let's pull it back a bit, because we went almost past where society was comfortable. Blake, yeah. I'm also wondering what would happen if we did a focus group for the Church Gear podcast.
I think they'd say less is more. We probably publish once a year.
Less Blake is more, or
whoa! I said less is. I'm the sugar to the bitter taste of Toby. All right,
girl, please.
Oh man, it is late on a Friday. You can tell it on this recording. Okay, Griffin, give us a disaster story that is better than Toby saying "girl, please." We haven't had John in 2 years. I'm sure there's been something crazy that's happened in between that time.
The thing that immediately comes to mind is the snow machines from this last Christmas. I've said it time and time again. I will never use a snow machine again. And you know what I'm told in a meeting every couple of years? You have snow machines this year. So snow machines to me are very inconsistent, both in performance and output.
That's how I describe Toby.
Yeah.
Girl, please.
So,
guys, we have Friday recording energy and it's coming out on a Monday.
Oh, man. And so, there's a Monday people that are going to be awake during this.
Cutting this.
And so we had 28 snow machines in the Grand Small Auditorium, not to just like flex on them, but just literally because we needed that many to get the coverage of the whole room. The idea was that the whole place would be a winter wonderland. Well, every time I would hit the cue that they were like supposed to start in, every time it would be a different amount of output from every single one of them, 28 total.
Wow.
So I was kind of like adjusting on the fly, like making it work. Like attendees, like would get a little bit of snow in some places and like, plops of snow the size of my head in other spots. So we were just kind of like trying to dial it in. And honestly, moving into like the third or fourth day of services, I was feeling pretty good, which was the first problem. So we get into rehearsal on I think it was the fifth day, the day before Christmas Eve. So that means we've got 4 shows left. So we're seven shows in. Well, during rehearsal, I noticed there were about 3 snow machines in a row that were like barely spitting anything out. And I was like, you know what? I've had it with these things. I'm going to just turn up the intensity on these until they just like get whatever's wrong with them out and start outputting well. So I'm like, I think they're running at like 20%. So, on the program on the console, I'm like 30, 40, 50. And I'm like looking at them like a mad dad and they're just like still not doing anything. I'm like 60, 70. I get all the way up to 100 and I have time to kind of cross my arms and like lean back in front of house. And I watch the entire catwalk just power down from one side to the other.
Whoops.
And I have a moment of just A, sheer panic, and B, I don't even know how I did what I just did because we've got plenty of power in the broadcast campus. And so I start kind of like clearing out the programmer, like stopping the 100% on the snow machines and like go up to the rack room. And I've essentially killed 2 dimmer racks about 30 minutes before we're supposed to open doors for a Christmas service. Come to find out, running that many of them at 100% causes some power issues that, I'm still not really sure what happened, but something happened. Before anybody comments on the podcast, I know the rules of amperage, and we were evenly loaded and unloaded and spread out across a load. I don't really know what happened. I still to this day, I kind of don't totally get it. I think there was a little bit of like maybe a power surge or something kind of at the same time. Something happened. Long story short, ended up just absolutely frying an ETC dimmer sensor rack CPU module, the computer that sits in the middle. By the grace of God, had a spare one, took it out of the box, slid it in, it powered on, worked. And I was so scared I didn't even turn those 3 snow machines back on the rest of Christmas services. That was one. And what was so scary about that was there's probably a lot of people out there that can relate. Our building was built in 2007, our broadcast building. So it was very dimmer heavy back then, source 4 LECOs, all that kind of stuff. And in an LED world today, I don't need the power dimming control. I just need the power. So we have a lot of stuff running on the like always on setting on our ETC sensor racks. We're just providing like 10 amps of power to a lot of stuff through dimmers. And so what was kind of scary about the whole situation was the front wash. Well, Grants Mill has a speaking front wash and a vocal front wash. So one during worship, one during speaking. The one for vocal is run off of dimmer power. So until I figured out what was wrong, I had no front wash for worship. Now, I could have run the speaking front wash. It would have just like looked not good to me. Would anybody in the room notice? Probably not. Yada yada yada. But there was a few minutes where I was kind of panicking, and then we kind of figured it out. We got everything under control, and we moved on from there. I'll never use snow machines again.
Toby, did you hear that
I'll
Church
probably
Gear
be told
just
to use snow machines again?
You hear that Church Gear just bought all the snow machines from Church of the Highlands?
I was wondering what was out there in the tech shop today.
That'd make for some great social media videos. I'm only half kidding now.
I know. And I can just imagine fire sheets and master control, like watching this all go down and then just deciding to teach you a lesson. And so I could just see him setting up that ETC just to fail to teach you a lesson.
Just half popping the tab on it so it like unseats from its its pins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can see it.
Yeah.
I can see it.
Well, Justin had to do something about all this ice machines because he's fire sheets. This is ice machines.
Girl, please.
It's just
true.
Please. This is the weirdest bit you've ever had, you a-host. Okay, McGravy, give us a tech takeaway, man. Wrap us up so I don't have to hear Toby say that phrase again. What's something that would make everyone's Sundays a little better besides not having a snow machine?
I think something that would make everybody's Sunday better that I've been thinking a lot about lately is don't make it so hard on yourself. So I think when attendees come into church, if it's excellent, if it's a impactful environment, I think that resonates with people way more than if the lights were in downstage wide or vocalist position for song 3. I've been encouraging some of the team a lot with this lately, that I think especially in a volunteer scenario, I think we're asking a lot of people who already put 40 hours of work into their daytime job, and then they want to come worship and serve the church by graciously being willing to be on our production team with us. And I don't want to get in a scenario in a season where it seems like people are trying to figure out how to get back in a rhythm. I don't want to be another thing overloading onto people. So I think the less we can do, I tell our volunteers all the time, like, hey, guess what? This is the third week in a row I've used, downstage wide position for the profiles for song one. And they'll be like, no way. And I'm like, yep. And you and no one else noticed. So not being sloppy, not in a sense of missing on the excellence mark, but in a sense of we need to be excellent, but we also need to be people focused. I think any way we can kind of help our teams, encourage our teams right now in this season, it seems like we're kind of moving into, I think the better for the church as a whole.
That's really good. I definitely think that people are feeling a little, as you say, like overwhelmed. They've read the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. Now they're coming back into their routine. How can we do that in a good way? It's pretty good, yeah. Griff. Well, we're real excited to see you at FILO tomorrow. And, you have some not Friday energy on a Tuesday at FILO, although maybe that's even, FILO energy is probably even crazier than a Friday energy.
Tuesday morning at FILO is going to be high energy, but by like 2 p.m., I'm going to need I'm
going to have coffee in your IV.
Yeah. And what's that stuff they give when you code? Oh, adrenaline. I'm going to just need a shot of adrenaline.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. You're just going to go straight for the IV.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Totally.
Okay. I'll steer clear of you tomorrow. Yep.
Griffin, maybe I should let him know that when I pat him on the back before episodes, I've been hitting him with an adrenaline patch every episode.
That's a good idea.
You've kind of gotten numb to the effects, though.
Low.
Well, I guess we'll see you tomorrow at FILO, Griffin.
Sounds great. Looking forward to it.
Hey, listeners. We're introducing a segment called Church Tech Confessionals. This is a time for any church tech to anonymously confess the worst thing they've ever done in church production. Here's one now.
Church Tech Confessional.
So one of the stories that I've shared in the past, which is a low moment, was at a church where I once served. The pastor was insistent that his tone-deaf daughter be a part of the worship team. And every Sunday, I would make sure that no one, for the sake of everyone involved, could hear her vocal. Because what's worse than a praise team vocalist that can't sing on tune? One day he walked into the booth and he kept telling me to turn her up, and I had her double patched to a fader that didn't go to the stereo bus, so I kept turning her up to the fader that went to nowhere. And he couldn't hear any change. And so he kept telling me to turn her up louder, and there was obviously no change for the safety of those all involved. And then finally he says, listen, I need her to be up louder. And again, this would not have been a good idea. And I just looked at him and I said, sir, I can preach better than you can mix. Get out of my tech booth. And he actually left instead of fire me. Now that felt good in the moment, but upon reflecting, I don't know that I was following the character of Christ. And so years later, I did reconnect with my pastor after moving on to another church. And I brought up that story and I said, listen, I think I was in the wrong in this moment. Maybe. And so I replayed the entire scenario. His daughter was no longer attempting to be in music or involved in singing in any way. She had found a new calling, fortunately for everyone involved. And I described the scenario to him, and the line of I can preach better than you can mix. And he looked at me and he said, I don't even have any idea what you're talking about. And that is my Church Tech Confessional.
Hey, if you have your own 3 to 5 minute Church Tech Confessional, record it and send it to podcast@churchgear.com. And don't worry, we'll apply a voice changer and you'll be 100% anonymous. Your pastor will never know.
Thanks for hanging out with us. We hope to see you back next week for more absurd stories, tech takeaways, and overall buffoonery here at the Church Gear Studios.
Okay, Blake, I figured it out. What we're going to do is we're going to go to Christmas at the Highlands next year.
Sounds great.
They're going to have the snow machines going. The floor is going to be icy. You are going to slip and hurt yourself.
Workman's comp.
And we're going to sue Highlands.
That sounds great. Let's sue them for their snow machines.
What if we just said, hey, we'll make you a deal. If you share this episode, we won't sue you.
That's a great idea. So share this episode and Church of the Highlands won't sue you or us.
Girl, please.